All right. So, hi, welcome to Highline Reads. I'm Sam, one of your librarians. This reading part of the session will be recorded for the next 25 or 30 minutes. Afterwards, we'll stop recording, and whoever's still here is welcome to participate in just a candid conversation or ask our reader any questions that they'd like. We thank you for being here today at our Highline Reads Guest Reader program on different topics for the adult set. Please stay for that off-camera conversation afterwards. If you are interested in being a future reader, you're welcome to reach out to the librarian team either in the chat box or at our email refhelp@highline.edu. All right, before we jump into the program, we'd like to share a land acknowledgement. We'd like to recognize the people whose lands that we are on today. Highline College itself, and where many of us live and work, resides on the ancestral native lands of the Duwamish Nation. And depending on our exact cities in this region, many of us live and work on Muckleshoot, Duwamish, and Puyallup indigenous lands. Me, personally, I'm out of town right now, so I'm currently in Tonga Valley Land in California. We honor the land and give gratitude to the First Nations peoples that are here. And I'm going to drop a link in the chat that has an interactive native land map for anyone who wants to share and look at different native lands based on city and zip code. All right, so thank you all. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our last winter quarter reader, English professor Rhiannon Hillman. Rhiannon will explore the ironies and poetics of relationships while reading a mix of her own writing, some poems from Rupi Kaur's Milk and Honey, and a couple New York Times articles. We'll be dropping different links for the books and website poems in the chat, so look out for those links. For the next 30 minutes of the reading, we ask that you keep your comments to the chat box or stay for the optional discussion off camera afterwards. All right, let's get comfortable, everyone, and the floor is yours, Rhiannon.
Thank you. Thank you for creating this space for this opportunity, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm very excited. So I am going to kind of run through a few things today. So I'm going to start with Rupi Kaur's Milk and Honey, which is Andrews McNeil Publishing, 2015. And this is available in the Highline Library. So I wanted to start off by saying that I hadn't actually heard of Rupi Kaur until one of my students introduced me to her. So the first time I taught creative writing at Highline, we were still in person. And I had this Favorite Things Friday activity where students would present on their favorite author. So when the student presented on Milk and Honey, I think I was one of those bad students during her presentation who ordered the book as she was still presenting. So that's just how much it struck me. So if you don't have this, I highly recommend it to everyone. One thing I want to show is that the table of contents, she has it broken up, and I'm sorry if you can't see that. The categories so the book is broken into these 4 parts, and it's really beautiful too, because even the book itself, you can almost see the black dividers that separate each section. So it's just a very well thought out, beautifully presented and formatted book. So the 4 chapters are the hurting, the loving, the breaking, and the healing. And so I'm going to read 1 or 2 from each section because they're very short. So this first one is from the hurting. How is it so easy for you to be kind to people? He asked. Milk and honey dripped from my lips as I answered, because people have not been kind to me. This is from the next section, which is called The Loving. You are the faint line between faith and blindly waiting. A letter to my future lover. This next one is from The Breaking. I always get myself into this mess. I always let him tell me I am beautiful and half believe it. I always jump thinking he will catch me at the fall. I am hopelessly a lover and a dreamer, and that will be the death of me. This is also from The Breaking. And it's one of my favorites because this was what my student first presented in their class. So it's called To-Do List After the Breakup. 1, take refuge in your bed. 2, cry till the tears stop. This will take a few days. 3, don't listen to slow songs. 4, delete their number from your phone, even though it is memorized on your fingertips. 5, don't look at old photos. 6, find the closest ice cream shop and treat yourself to 2 scoops of mint chocolate chip. The mint will calm your heart. You deserve the chocolate. 7, buy new bed sheets. 8, collect all the gifts, t-shirts, and everything with their smell on it and drop it off at a donation center. 9, plan a trip. 10, perfect the art of smiling and nodding when someone brings up their name in conversation. 11, start a new project. 12, whatever you do, do not call. 13, do not beg for what does not want to stay. 14, stop crying at some point. 15, allow yourself to feel foolish for believing you could have built the rest of your life in someone else's stomach. 16, breathe. This next is, these next 2 are from The Healing, which is the final chapter. Loneliness is a sign you are in desperate need of yourself. You are in the habit of codepending on people to make up for what you think you lack. Who tricked you into believing another person was meant to complete you when the most they can do is compliment? Fall in love with your solitude. You deserve to be completely found in your surroundings, not lost within them. Your body is a museum of natural disasters. Can you grasp how stunning that is? Losing you was the becoming of myself. I want to apologize to all the women I've called pretty before I've called them intelligent or brave. I am sorry I made it sound as though something as simple as what you are born with is the most you have to be proud of. When your spirit has crushed mountains, from now on, I will say things like, you are resilient or you are extraordinary. Not because I don't think you're pretty, but because you are so much more than that. And final one from Rupi Kaur is dedicated to all you young poets. Your art is not about how many people like your work. Your art is about if your heart likes your work, if your soul likes your work. It's about how honest you are with yourself. And you must never trade honesty for relatability. I could read the whole book, but instead you should just go get a copy. So that's Rupi Kaur. I'm going to switch gears, and this next piece is over here, so I'm going to be looking this way. But I'm actually going to share it with you as well. I want to give everyone the link. I will say of this next author, if you have not heard of Alain de Botton, he is a philosopher, and he's also just a very, very funny dude. And he has just some really wonderful, delightful insights. So there is the link. This is the piece that I will be reading. It was an opinion piece from 2016 in the New York Times titled, "Why You Will Marry the Wrong Person." All right. It's one of the things we are most afraid might happen to us. We go to great lengths to avoid it, and yet we do it all the same. We marry the wrong person. Partly, it's because we have a bewildering array of problems that emerge when we try to get close to others. We seem normal only to those who don't know us very well. In a wiser, more self-aware society than our own, a standard question on an early dinner date would be, "And how are you crazy?" Perhaps we have a latent tendency to get furious when someone disagrees with us, or can relax only when we are working. Perhaps we're tricky about intimacy after sex, or clam up in response to humiliation. Nobody's perfect. The problem is that before marriage, we rarely delve into our complexities. Whenever casual relationships threaten to reveal our flaws, we blame our partners and call it a day. As for our friends, they don't care enough to do the hard work of enlightening us. One of the privileges of being on our own is therefore the sincere impression that we are really quite easy to live with. Our partners are no more self-aware. Naturally, we make a stab at trying to understand them. We visit their families, we look at their photos, we meet their college friends. All this contributes to a sense that we've done our homework. We haven't. Marriage ends up as a hopeful, generous, infinitely kind gamble taken by two people who don't know yet who they are or who the other might be, binding themselves to a future they cannot conceive of and have carefully avoided investigating. For most of recorded history, people married for logical sorts of reasons, because her parcel of land adjoined yours. His family had a flourishing business. Her father was the magistrate in town. There was a castle to keep up, or both sets of parents subscribed to the same interpretation of a holy text. And from such reasonable marriages, there flowed loneliness, infidelity, abuse, hardness of heart, and screams heard through the nursery doors. The marriage of reason was not, in hindsight, reasonable at all. It was often expedient, narrow-minded, snobbish, and exploitative. That is why what has replaced it, the marriage of feeling, has largely been spared the need to account for itself. What matters in the marriage of feeling is that two people are drawn to each other by an overwhelming instinct and know in their hearts that it is right. Indeed, the more imprudent a marriage appears, perhaps it's only been 6 months since they met, one of them has no job or both are barely out of their teens, the safer it can feel. Recklessness is taken as a counterweight to all the errors of reason, that catalyst of misery that accountants demand. The prestige of instinct is the traumatized reaction against too many centuries of unreasonable reason. But though we believe ourselves to be seeking happiness in marriage, it isn't that simple. What we really seek is familiarity, which may well complicate any plans we might have had for our happiness. We are looking to recreate within our adult relationships the feelings we know or we knew so well in childhood. The love most of us will have tasted early on was often confused with other, more destructive dynamics. Feelings of wanting to help an adult who is out of control, of being deprived of a parent's warmth or scared of his anger, of not feeling secure enough to communicate our wishes. How logical then that we should, as grown-ups, find ourselves rejecting certain candidates for marriage, not because they are wrong, but because they are too right, too balanced, mature, understanding, reliable, given that in our hearts, such rightness feels foreign. We marry the wrong people because we don't associate being loved with feeling happy. We make mistakes too because we are so lonely. No one can be in an optimal frame of mind to choose a partner when remaining single feels unbearable. We have to be wholly at peace with the prospect of many years of solitude in order to be appropriately picky. Otherwise, we risk loving no longer being single, rather more than we love the partner who spared us that fate. Finally, we marry to make a nice feeling permanent. We imagine that marriage will help us to bottle the joy we felt when the thought of proposing first came to us. Perhaps we were in Venice, on the lagoon, in a motorboat, with the evening sun throwing glitter across the sea, chatting about aspects of our soul no one ever seemed to have grasped before, with the prospect of dinner in a risotto place a little later. We married to make such sensations permanent, but failed to see that there was no solid connection between these feelings and the institution of marriage. Indeed, marriage tends decisively to move us onto another, very different and more administrative plane, which perhaps unfolds in a suburban house with a long commute and maddening children who kill the passion from which they emerged. The only ingredient in common is the partner, and that might have been the wrong ingredient to bottle. The good news is that it doesn't matter if we find we have married the wrong person. We mustn't abandon him or her, only the founding romantic idea upon which the Western understanding of marriage has been based the last 250 years, that a perfect being exists who can meet all our needs and satisfy our every yearning. We need to swap the romantic view for a tragic and at points comedic awareness that every human will frustrate, anger, annoy, madden, and disappoint us. And we will, without any malice, do the same to them. There can be no end to our sense of emptiness and incompleteness, but none of this is unusual or grounds for divorce. Choosing whom to commit ourselves to is merely a case of identifying which particular variety of suffering we would most like to sacrifice ourselves for. This philosophy of pessimism offers a solution to a lot of distress and agitation around marriage. It might sound odd, but pessimism relieves the excessive imaginative pressure that our romantic culture places upon marriage. The failure of one particular partner to save us from our grief and melancholy is not an argument against that person, and no sign that a union deserves to fail or be upgraded. The person who is best suited to us is not the person who shares our every taste. He or she or they doesn't exist. But the person who can negotiate differences in taste intelligently, the person who is good at disagreement, rather than some notional idea of perfect complementarity, there it is the capacity to tolerate differences with generosity that is the true marker of the not overly wrong person. Compatibility is an achievement of love. It must not be its precondition. Romanticism has been unhelpful to us. It is a harsh philosophy. It has made a lot of what we are going through in marriage seem exceptional and appalling. We end up lonely and convinced that our union with its imperfections is not normal. We should learn to accommodate ourselves to wrongness, striving always to adopt a more forgiving, humorous, and kindly perspective on its multiple examples in ourselves and in our partners. There we go. So I have to follow that up by telling you all that he also, so Elaine de Bottom did this fantastic YouTube. So I'm going to throw that link into the chat real quick. Oops. Sorry, I thought I had this ready. Any questions? I haven't been able to read the chat. Or am I supposed to keep reading? You guys tell me.
Yeah, we're gonna hold comments and cues for the end.
Okay.
That works. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, just all right, here's the link. And sorry, my automatic cat feeder is going off at the same time. Yeah, buddy. Okay, here we go. Okay, so if that piqued your curiosity at all, I will say that Elaine de Bottom does a very funny follow-up in the YouTube chat that I just put, or the YouTube link I just put in the chat. It is hysterical. He is really funny, but it's also really poignant. And again, it's a follow-up on the reactions he received from this opinion piece he wrote. So I hope you enjoy it. It's like 20 minutes, I think. And it's really fun. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you folks is the, I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Hopefully you have all heard of Modern Love. Modern Love is it's a New York Times column. So this is it, and I will throw this in the chat. So Modern Love is a wonderful column. They do podcasts. I believe it's, Cheryl Strayed does the podcast quite often and is phenomenal. She interviews some really wonderful authors. I know at the beginning of the pandemic, that was something that Laura Sirocco had turned me on to, was the, what was it? Cheryl Strayed, who is a phenomenal nonfiction writer. She interviewed George Saunders and it was just lovely. So I highly recommend that. What I was going to show you is that for my students right now, we have been playing with these tiny love stories. So we went through and we read through some of these. So sorry, I'll put that link in here too. Oops, I'm like having a hard time doing chat at the same time. Sorry. There we go. Oh, that's still Modern Love. Anywho, so if you go to Modern Love and you look for tiny stories, you will find these tiny love stories. And what they are is they're miniature reader submitted stories about love in no more than 100 words. So I'm going to go ahead and just read this first one here. turning bitter fruit sweet. A blue dawn as I think about how life will proceed without 80-year-old me, how to make those dim vapors disperse, eggs, coffee, a thin slice of toast, and dare I open a jar of my homemade marmalade? With the inordinate work to make the jam, slicing countless sour oranges into pieces. I've always saved these jars to give to special people. But today, in a wild, life-affirming gesture, I open the preserves for myself. Sticky and runny, the marmalade acts as an elixir, melting away the trailing wisps of blue. Love it. So yeah. Oh, this one was magical too. I'm gonna read this one too. Music from Myanmar. I was teaching English in Myanmar when we met 2 years ago. Music connected us, afternoons strumming a cheap guitar as we tried to harmonize. I was learning Burmese. He covered our apartment in Post-it notes with each item's Burmese name. This January, I returned home to Australia because my mother was sick. In February, when the military staged a coup in Myanmar, he said, "They stole our future." I could feel his frustration and pain, but every night when we FaceTime, he smiles and joins his neighbors as they bang kitchenware in protest, a hopeful harmony. So I absolutely love this. And I wanted to kind of finish off today with my own piece that I recently submitted or was playing with and submitted. So I wanted to show everyone, this is an exercise. I had my creative writing students doing this where they had to write a 750 word piece, cut it down to 500, cut it down to 250. And oh my God, they hated it. They were like, no, it's the worst thing. We hate that assignment, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, well, let's just try this. Let's try to do the Modern Love 100 words. So what I did is my first version was 152 words. And then I went through again. I got it down to 112. And then this was the final, I'm actually going to stop sharing. This was the final piece that I submitted with some pictures. You were warped, polluted, and violated for me at an early age. I sought you in everyone I met. Once I learned what you really are, I mourned the false idols I had put in your place. After years of solitude, I was struck with awe at the sky emblazoned with pinks, purples, and oranges, and I wondered what it would be like to share this moment with a beloved. I am ready to redefine you, to be seen, heard, held, understood like never before, because that is the faith I have in you, love. And that's it.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. We'll see. And then, I'll show you real quick. These are the pictures I submitted with it because one of the things I absolutely love about living up here are these phenomenal sunsets. So these were the sunsets that inspired that little piece. Yeah. How are we doing on time, folks?
We are great on time. Yeah, if you feel like everything that you wanted to read is already here, we can then shortly stop the recording and flow into the conversation off camera. Does that work?
Yeah, I'm just gonna add one more thing before we stop recording.
Okay.
I want everyone to see this. Obviously, well, I'm a nonfiction writer predominantly. I do play with some fiction, but my jam's nonfiction, and I've been doing a lot of trauma memoir, and it's really friggin' difficult. But something that has just been really magical that I wanted to share with everyone is called the Hapa Apa Ono prayer. And I may have said that wrong. But this is one that I thankfully was taught a long time ago. But it's just really powerful for anyone going through anything. And it's really wonderful because all you have to do is be intentional. And I don't know, for me lately, I've been doing a lot of, just body acceptiveness and just being in my body more. So I find myself saying, body, I'm sorry, body, I love you, body, please forgive me, body, thank you. And it's also just really powerful. Like, I don't have a great relationship with my father, but I will do this prayer and I will say, Dad, I'm sorry. Dad, please forgive me, which that one always kind of puts this bitterness in my, but that's why we do this practice, right? So yeah, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. You can do them in whatever order you want, but it's so simple and yet it has just immense power. So I wanted to make sure that gets shared in the recording.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And at this point, we'll pause the recording so we can